Hi, and welcome to the Birth and Rebirth podcast. I'm Tiffany Caligari.
And I'm Kurston Clark. We are born again birth workers who share the birth stories of Christian women, highlighting God's perfect design.
And their testimonies of finding Jesus. Here, we will chat about many topics pertaining to birth, spirituality, and everything in between.
Let's dive in.
Have an exciting episode today because Kurston is telling her amazing free birth story.
What?
I absolutely love Kirsten's birth story. It's just so like exactly what birth is. Like it's like normal, like nothing was like dramatized, like it just is a chill, sweet birth story. So, Kirsten, when you're ready.
Okay. All right. So I will start where all births start, which is the pregnancy part. I found out I was pregnant in January of 2021. It was really exciting, but kind of uneasy waters to tread through. I had a really deep desire to become a mom, and I had shared this with my boyfriend at the time, my boyfriend of 8 years. And when we found out we were pregnant, it was half exciting and half scary, more scary at first. He definitely felt like he wanted to wait and just had, like a spirit of fear around having a baby and becoming a father. So we actually talked about terminating the pregnancy. And I always like to share this because it was a part of my story. I mean, I made the appointment twice. I cried and cried and cried those, first few weeks after finding out. Um,
Wow.
just really weighing what this was going to mean for me, for our lives. And I will never forget, like, being in the shower and thinking about this, and I was just crying. And I really felt like what I felt like was my baby saying, like, please, like, I want to be here. Like, I want to be alive. Like, you know, kind of
Yeah.
like you prayed for me, and like I'm here now. Um, so yeah, we talked about it in depth. I actually went on like a trip to Philadelphia to like see my friend. And after I came back, me and my fella, we sat down and he was like, "Look, I think that we can do this." And so we were all in to have our sweet little baby.
I love
Um, yeah, yeah, it's something that I think about a lot. Just because if I had gone through with the decision to terminate the pregnancy, I don't know who I would be right now.
Absolutely. And I love that you tell that part of your birth story, because that's an easy detail to leave out, especially if you're one to like worry about what people are going to think about you. And, this is the reality of it. And this is like really where you are at that time. And I just think that it's so beautiful and it adds so much depth to the birth story because you went through such like a range of emotions throughout this entire pregnancy.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely did. And man, I definitely did. So I, at this time, on, I was not on speaking terms with my mom. Um, we have some substance abuse problems in our family, and it had come to a head the year before, and I finally set a boundary of like, I can't do this. Like, I can't be involved with this anymore. I was all the drama. So her and I hadn't been speaking for a few months, and then I found out I was pregnant, and I was like, there's no way that I can, you know, um, can talk to her. Like, I can't do it. But that was a really hard part of my pregnancy, was having my mom, she like literally lives like around the corner from me. And I didn't see or speak to her the entire time.
Wow.
Um, yeah, that was really hard on my heart. But in the beginning of my pregnancy, I was very emotional, and my health was also really poor. I was waiting tables at the time. I didn't have good eating habits. I was still drinking, not as much as I had been, but just drinking, and like my tooth broke in my first trimester. I was trying to eat an apple. It was when I was in Philadelphia with my friend, and I was eating an apple the morning. I was supposed to get on my flight back home, and my tooth broke. And I was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
I was crying
Was it a
this whole
front
pregnancy.
tooth?
No, it
Okay.
was like I don't know, like my third molar
Oh,
on the top. It's not super obvious, but it definitely was like one of the things that like set me off. I was like, how am I gonna have a baby? My body's falling apart. Like,
yeah.
what am I doing? Um,
Teeth health is
and
so important when you're pregnant, guys. It's a real
yes,
thing.
it really is. Like my teeth were already in poor shape. And like once I started growing that sweet little baby, it's like all the calcium stores that I
Mhm.
had just went straight to the baby, and my teeth suffered.
For sure.
Um, so yeah, I was just in poor health. I was waiting tables. I ended up quitting my waitressing job in March. I was gonna try and work like as long as I could, but I was just so like emotional. Like the day that I quit, um, I had gone to work and I just like couldn't stop crying. I could not stop crying. I was in the bathroom. I was like nauseous and like trying to throw up and crying. And finally, I went out to my manager and I was like, I can't stop crying. Like, I'm inconsolable. Like, I can't do this. And he was like, okay, do you want like a smaller section? And I looked at him and I was like, bro, like, I
Mhm.
can't talk to people. Like, I
Oh,
am going to cry at them all night long. I have to go home. So, like, just didn't go back to work after that. And yeah, I was like just home for the rest of my pregnancy, and it was a blessing, honestly. Like I'm really really glad that my first pregnancy, even though it was hard with the money, um I'm just so thankful that I was able to be in my home and do like a lot of healing with my body and just where my emotional state was, and preparing for birth became like my priority, like
yeah.
that. I was like, okay, I'm pregnant. I have to give birth. Like, how do I do that? So, um, I hired a doula. She was the first doula that I met with. And when I met with her, I was crying. What a surprise. And I literally was like, I'm not talking to my mom right now. Like, I was, it's just so funny because when I look back on it, I was basically like, will you be my mom? Because I was
Aw,
like, like my heart, like I was missing that like mothering presence over like my first pregnancy. And yeah, so and she was a super cool doula, she was like very laid back, very chill. And she was also super down with the idea of home birth or even like unassisted birth. Um, because what happened is once I started, staying home, and it was like my only concern was like preparing myself for birth. I was like, okay, like I gotta give birth. How am I gonna give birth? Like,
Yeah.
where do I want to give birth, Um, I did have, I think, two or three like OBGYN appointments. Like I had the initial, um, like going in to confirm that I was in fact pregnant. And then I think I had like a second appointment at, I think I had three. I had a second appointment at 9 weeks to get the first ultrasound. And then I went again at like 10 or 12 weeks, something like that. And my last appointment was so the OBGYN, and I know this is very common in, the like hospital culture, just like the things that they say, and they don't realize that the things that they say are so like, just
Mean, inappropriate.
inappropriate. So I'm I am pregnant. I am a hormonal lady. And it's so funny because like now I'm like, if you want to get an ultrasound, go for it. But for me, I would not choose to get it, just for, lots of reasons. But I was like super
Yeah, they're
into like
unnecessary.
they're unnecessary, and like sometimes getting ultrasounds, especially in late pregnancy, can actually lead to intervention. But I digress. That is a topic for another podcast episode.
Yeah.
Um, I I was like hungry for my ultrasound picture, and I went in thinking I was getting one at the third appointment. And when I got there, they were like, "No, you're not scheduled. You're not getting an ultrasound today." And oh, that made me mad because I had called beforehand. I called beforehand, and I was like confirming that I was going to get an ultrasound, and they confirmed that I was going to get an ultrasound, and then I got there and I wasn't getting one. So I was like not happy about that. And then I went back to see the doctor man, and he's like looking over my paperwork. I've never met this guy. The guy that I met before was not this guy. But this guy's looking over my paperwork, and he goes, "Oh, you've gained some weight for me."
Ew.
And I was like, "Sir,
For me.
for for you, I have not
Um,
gained weight for you." I was like,
that is
"I
some sick stuff.
girl,
Like,
when I say
ew.
I was just like, I literally like I was like I didn't know what to say because I was just like, for you? Like I've
The
never met you.
the
I'm gaining
audacity.
weight for me and the baby that I'm growing, like gross.
Oh,
And then he also made me mad because he told me I was vitamin D deficient, and he told me that I was going to have to take vitamin D supplements for the rest of my life. And I'm like,
your life.
you just met me and you're prescribing me like a lifelong
Vitamin.
vitamin. I was so over it. And like we got in the
Because the
car
sun doesn't exist anymore.
because
So,
the sun doesn't exist, and there aren't like food options where that you can consume to increase your vitamin D.
yeah.
Literally got in the car. I turned to my boyfriend and I was like, "We're never going back." I hated that. That was awful. I can't believe you said those things. And then I went home and I laid in the sun and got a sunburn because I am a very fair-skinned woman. And I was like, I can get vitamin D without having to take supplements. And I got a sunburn.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, y'all just be careful when you're out in the sun. Don't stay out there for too long. Um, so anyway, yeah, so pretty quickly in my pregnancy, I definitely was feeling like nah at the medical system. Like I was like, no, like this isn't for me. I had had previous experiences in hospitals that were traumatic where I had been like Baker acted in the state of Florida. That's when you're either at harm to yourself or others. I was a harm to myself. So I had been Baker acted and just like left alone in a hospital room to kind of like be in pain, and
Oh,
it was just, yeah, it was not a good experience. So I already knew that like I didn't want to be in a hospital when I gave birth. And I was listening to these birth podcasts about, like home birth with midwives, like that's where I started. And um like it sounded good, but there were like a few things. Like there was like one episode that really stuck out to me where this woman was talking about her home birth and like she went through the entire birth. And then the midwife, like after she had her baby, the midwife waited like 20 minutes or something and basically like came to her and said, "Hey, like if you don't give birth to your placenta, I'm either going to have to stick my hand up inside you and pull it out or give you a shot of Pitocin."
I
And
cannot with these threats.
right?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, it just makes my skin crawl. And the
seriously.
woman, the mama was like, she said that she just started crying.
Yeah.
Like she was just crying because she was tired. She had just given birth. Like she just wanted to rest, Like she just wanted a pause and some time to like, you know,
Which is
let it.
totally fine.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like just rest for a little while. And then when you feel like your energy is like up and ready, like, okay, like now, like let's get this placenta out and you can do a few different things, try a few different positions. But of course, under the care of like medical midwifery, they have like obviously they have a like what's the word? Preordained. They have a preconception of like when the placenta should be out. And they also have like a protocol, like Pitocin is a part of the protocol. And so anyway, that particular story, like when she was like, yeah, I cried because I was just so tired. But then because I wanted to have a drug-free birth, I ended up just letting her like stick her hand up in there to pull it out.
Oh no.
And it was so horrible and awful and painful. And I was like, whoa, like I
That is
don't think I'd be down for that.
terrible.
Yeah. So,
People make the placenta birth this like really scary thing, and it's just like, guys, it happens just like birth. This is a part of birth. Like your body knows what to do. Like people really overthink the placenta thing. And when I say people, I mean midwives and and
yeah.
OB and OBs.
hmm
I.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well that sounded like I not something I want to experience. But it was just like such a like unfolding and learning because I decided probably in like May that I wanted to have a home birth, and I was going to interview midwives to facilitate the home birthing. My boyfriend, when I told him I wanted to have a home birth, he cried. He
Oh,
was so scared. Again, this sweet man really had a spirit of fear. And like his birth story, he was born to a mom who was like 44 years old. She was induced. The induction led to an infection for the mama, which led to a blood infection for him. He was in the NICU. And so he has this birth story of like, if he wouldn't have been in the hospital, like he might not be here.
yeah.
But after learning about how the hospital interventions can actually cause things like the infection,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, man, maybe you wouldn't have actually had to go through that if your
Mm.
mom would have just been left alone to give birth to you, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but that was something we had to unpack together, and we went over like home birth, and we watched the what's the documentary?
The, the being born.
The Business of Being Born. We watched that one
Damn.
together. Y'all.
That's a good one to watch with your significant other.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's a little cheesy because it's older
It's
movie
old.
now, but it's still got a good message. Like it's still really good. And then there was another documentary that we watched, and I think it's called Why Not Home.
Mm,
Um that one was really good too. And so, yeah, like we started preparing ourselves for like, okay, home birth. Meanwhile, I'm not having any medical care. I'm not under the supervision of an OB or a midwife. Anybody who asks, I'm like, oh, well, actually, I'm looking for a midwife right now. Like I just kind of like was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a midwife. Like it's fine. Um, I interviewed midwives. There wasn't one that I felt like an absolute all full body yes, like I feel like I can completely trust you. Um, and at the same time, I'm listening to these podcasts and I find the Freebirth Society podcast.
mm,
And when I started listening to Freebirth stories, pretty immediately I was like, oh my gosh, yes.
mm.
Like these stories were so epic and awesome. And, you know, I just I remember I did a lot of like yard work while I was pregnant just to like be outside. And I remember like listening to the stories and being in my yard. And like there was one specific moment where I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't want any like medical people like hovering over me or like in the background. I just want to give birth. And like hearing these stories, it like gave me permission of like, oh, I can just give birth. Like I don't have to have any specific person there. And that was just so like I don't know, like empowering and freeing and also very exciting. Like it was like I was like, wow, I can just give birth. Like that's all I have to do. Like I just have to like let my body do what it was made to do.
Yeah, it's so freeing to just be able to surrender to not like overthink it and be like, doing all the things, interviewing all the people, like, oh, I can just birth? Like that's it? And I can like chill and just be like in tune with my body and God.
Hmm. Yeah.
Such a gift.
Yeah. And at this time, I was very deep into the new age. So, like, God was not on my mind. It was all about like astrology and I mean, I went through like a bunch of new age modalities like in my pregnancy, like trying to do quote unquote inner healing. And looking back, there are a few things that I'm kind of like thankful for, just things that I unpacked within myself
Mm,
just to understand more of like why I felt the way I felt, like my different fears, especially around birth. I unpacked a lot of like what my birth story was, what did I fear about birth, what did I think. But yeah, I landed on free birth and I was like, yes, yes, this is what I want to do. Back to my boyfriend who is a very afraid man. He was like, Kurston, you're crazy. You want to have a home birth, which is already crazy, but you don't want to have a midwife to like possibly save, you or our future baby's life. Like, so that was a hard talk, but I just shared with him what I was learning and I really took it upon myself to learn about birth and to learn, not just about birth, but also like the medical system and just yeah, I really took that like authority of like, okay, I'm in charge. Like, I am going to give birth at home with nobody else. So, like, what are all the things I need to know? What are the emergency situations where I would like absolutely definitely have to transfer? What are the stages of birth? Like just went through all of it. And yeah, that was like my whole summer was just like learning about birth. I fell in love. I loved birth and I was so excited. Like I was just so excited to give birth. Um, and yeah, I gave birth in October. So let me think if there was anything like I don't think there was like really anything intense that happened in my later pregnancy. It was just, I was just home. I was home. I was eating a lot. I was taking all of the naps. Oh my gosh, which is just like so blissful to think back on. Like, I'm so thankful that I just did mostly nothing while I was pregnant because it was so nice to be home and not having to work or rush around and do things, not having to go to like the OB appointments or even, midwife appointments where people are like wanting to do tests on me and like, that was part of it. Like I wasn't in the place to tell people no over and over again. Like
Mm,
I didn't know how to have healthy boundaries. And I'll admit that like I knew for myself that like having to tell somebody no over and over was going to be really hard for
it
me and emotionally draining.
absolutely. And that is like, I love that you brought that point up because it takes, you have to be humble to even be able to admit that, but it's such a real thing because when you birth in the medicalized birthing system with a midwife or an OB, you are going to have to know how to say no. And like, you are going to have to advocate for yourself. And, yes, you can depend on your doula and your husband, but really it's you at the end of the day who has to make these decisions, put your foot down, and it is a lot. It is a lot to do when you are pregnant and you are growing a baby and you are um birthing like because it doesn't
Yeah.
stop during pregnancy. You're gonna have to be doing this even during the labor and yeah, that's a big responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it is like if you want to go that route, it's definitely a responsibility you have to take on, unless you're cool with just being like swept up in the everything, like the assembly line of the medical system, which I don't recommend just going along with everything because that's how like really traumatic things can happen. But it can also be, yeah, like you said, just it's so, y- for me at least, when I was pregnant, I was so vulnerable. Again, I was very emotional. My health already wasn't the best. Oh, that is one thing. I had to get two root canals in my pregnancy. Not even on the tooth that broke.
No.
Yeah, so yeah, and now of course like after I've learned that root canals are
Are
actually not great,
terrible.
are terrible because they cause like permanent inflammation. I'm like, great, I have two. So that's for like a future Kirsten to get those removed. But regardless, I'm glad that I got it done because I was in so much pain from my teeth, girl, and
Oh,
like it was either get the two root canals or have them pulled out completely.
yeah.
And if I would have had them pulled, I would have had to put implants in so that my other teeth didn't like
Yeah.
roam around my
Mm.
house, my mouth, my mouth house.
I feel
Um,
you.
y-
I'm in that situation now. So I like feel
oh,
I feel you so hard because I also got a root canal unwillingly and yeah, I so regret it, but I'm like, wow, doing it the less toxic way is so hard.
Yes. Hashtag root canal regret over here on the Birth and Rebirth podcast. So yeah, that's like the one thing that was like pretty awful. Like in my pregnancy, having to get those root canals was not fun. But after I got them, I was really thankful because I wasn't in horrible, horrible mouth pain anymore. And yeah, the rest of my pregnancy was just like preparing, and I was really in like a very sweet little bubble, like in my home, listening to Freebirth stories, like, eating and buying like little things here and there to prepare for my baby coming, and just not having like a lot of people like asking me questions because I wasn't, when I went into public, it was just to like buy groceries, and I would hang out with friends here and there. Um, but it was just really nice. And at the very end of my pregnancy, I decided that I wanted to go and get like an adjustment,
Mm,
to like make sure my pelvis was like in the right spot or whatever. And I went to this chiropractor, and she's a woman, and just like very naively, I think, was just telling her my birth story, or my birth plan. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna give birth at home, and not have a midwife there. And she's like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. And then when I went back for my second appointment, she came at me with like so much fear, and basically was like, so if you like, I feel like she even said when, like, if you have to transfer to the hospital, you can't tell them that I was your prenatal care. And I was like, okay.
girl, you're not. Like,
I was like, I don't, like, we've had like two whole appointments. Like,
you're a
obviously, you have not been
chiropractor.
my yeah,
Like, what?
obviously, you're not my prenatal care. But I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I probably wouldn't even think to mention you because, like, I've only seen you once. And she had this whole story where I guess a woman had been seeing her through her pregnancy and then transferred to the hospital and told the hospital that the chiropractor was her prenatal care. And the chiropractor got like, in trouble. And so she was like super like, I don't know, like prickly already about that. And we went to do the adjustment, and she's pressing on my big pregnant belly, or big pregnant back, right? And it feels great. So I'm like letting out some relieved noises. And she stops and she scoffs and she goes, if you can't handle this, I don't know how you're going to handle labor and delivery.
Ew.
And I was like, ma'am, I was like, this just feels like a really nice back
This is
massage. Like, I'm
that's
like,
inappropriate.
I didn't know what to say. And I left. And surprise, surprise, I cried. I cried a lot. I called my boyfriend, and I was like, this woman told me I wasn't going to be able to handle labor and delivery. Like, I was so upset for a little while. And then it turned into like kind of like anger. And I was like, you know what? No, like, I'm going to free birth even harder now.
Exactly.
Like, that woman doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, she's not going to get in my head about my experience. So yeah, that happened at the very tail end of my pregnancy, and it was just like more fuel in the fire. I will also mention that I uninvited my doula like very last minute. I had been feeling like in the last trimester that I didn't really want her at my birth, but I didn't know how to like tell her because I didn't want to like hurt her feelings or like upset
Yeah.
her, because I was also like, well, maybe I do want her there, but I definitely didn't.
Yeah.
And nothing against her. I just really felt like it was just supposed to be me and the man I made a baby with. Um, so yeah, I uninvited her like at the 38-week mark when she was like reaching out to me about the second half of my payment. I was like, hey, so actually, I don't think I want you there. I'm so sorry. And she was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Like, just good luck. Like, hope you do good.
Aw.
Um, yeah, she was honestly really, really cool about it. And so yeah.
Anyone
S-
should be cool about what a mama chooses to do for her birth, you know? Like,
hmm.
it's great that she was, cool and sweet, but I feel like that really should be the standard. It's so sad that it's like not, and that we expect that people want to control women.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely experienced some pushback from like Keith's parents whenever I was sharing that we were going to have a home birth, and there was some fear there, and there was pushback, and we just didn't talk about it because I think they were just again like the spirit of fear, and they knew that like I was gonna do what I was gonna do, so they just didn't bring it back up. But it was a little tense, you know. So yeah, I'll go ahead and just get into the actual birth.
Yeah.
I we had just had our due date, right? Like I got a due date from the OBGYN. And on my due date, we went on a date and we had spaghetti and like I had a huge heaping thing of tiramisu. It was wonderful. Um, and I was just chilling, waiting for my baby to be born. I was doing like all the things to encourage my body to go into labor. Like I lived on my bouncy ball. I was eating pineapple. I like went and got thing of like spicy ramen noodles and I ate spicy ramen noodles. Like I was going on a walk like every single day. All the things to try to like encourage labor without like inducing labor. Um, and so I remember like the night before the day I knew, like kind of knew I was in labor. I was on the bouncy ball, bouncing, watching TV, and there was like a storm rolling in, the window was open, and as I was bouncing, I just felt something like shift. And I was like, whoa, like something feels different. And my man was like, are you okay? Like different good, different bad? And I was like, just different. It just feels different. It's interesting. And we went to bed. I woke up at like 3 in the morning and I was like, I need to go on a walk. So I woke him up. And this is one of my favorite parts of my birth story is like we got an umbrella and we walked down the road. It was like raining and it was like 3 a.m. And it was just like so sweet to like go on a walk in the rain. And yeah, I love that part of our birth story. Um,
That's it.
yeah. We came home, went back to bed. I woke back up at like 6, 7 a.m. and I was like, we need to go buy the stuff for French toast and bacon. And because I was like, I think I might be in labor. And my whole thing was I really wanted to eat French toast and bacon for breakfast
Mm,
after I gave birth to my baby. Um, so I was like, we need to go buy the stuff. And my boyfriend, he's like, okay. He's tired. He's like,
aw.
all right, we'll get back up. We go to the store and I'm like walking through the store and there were definitely moments where like I had to stop and like brace myself and I was like, okay. It's like it doesn't hurt. It's just like it just feels like something. It just feels intense. And I was having to like kind of brace myself and then I'd be like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. And yeah, we just kind of like spent the day out on the town. I got like a Starbucks coffee because I was like, if I'm in labor, I want to have like
Your
a
girl
nice
needs
coffee.
coffee.
Coffee all the time, every day. Um,
I
I
love
got a
it.
coffee. I came home and like I was like, okay, I think I'm in labor. So let's set up the birth pool. And my guy was like, okay, well, I need to go to the store to get like a fish net to fish out like poops from the water. Like that was really apparently important. So I was like, okay, like go on your net quest. Like I'll just be here like setting things up. So he left and I was setting things up. And it was like as soon as he was gone and I was like alone in the house by myself, I started to feel like not good. You
Mm,
know, like I was setting things up and then I was like feeling my sensations and I was like, "Oh, like I don't really want to be like alone in the house and have this happen." Like I started to kind of get upset and I was like, "Why did he leave? Why did he
mm,
leave? This is not the time for him to be leaving and going and buying stuff. He
mm.
needs to be here." So I called him and he came back home and we just got everything set up and the birth pool was really, really nice. It was super relaxing. Um, but I was in it for probably like an hour, just like going through my sensations and listening to music. And but after a while I was like, okay, I feel like I need to get out. Like I feel like I just need my feet on the ground. And I paced around my house. I crouched and just wherever I wanted to go, whatever I wanted to do is what I did. And there was one point where I got to a point, it's now like later in the evening. It's probably like 7 or 8 p.m. I was like crouched at the end of my bed and I was just like feeling through this sensation. And I was like, I feel like I'm almost ready to push. And I said it out loud, like, I feel like I'm ready to push. And I look up and my man is on his phone.
No.
And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm watching YouTube. And I'm like, what are you watching? And he's like, I'm watching breech birth videos so that like if we have a breech baby, I know what to do. I
Sweet
just like laughed.
man. Oh my goodness. I love that.
It was very sweet. And what was happening is like he was just kind of doing his thing and like preparing himself. And it was letting me do my thing without him like hovering over me and being like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" So everything was like perfect, but like that moment was just so special because I just like laughed and I was like, "You're doing your homework a little late, baby."
Yeah, that's
You
a
know, like we're in like the final
like
countdown.
baby's coming.
Yes. And but I just laughed and I was like, okay, well, if I need you, I will call you. And it was just like one of those things where like I was so glad that like he was there, but it was also like if I need you, like I'll let you know, but I don't need you right now. Like I'm just gonna give birth to this baby. That's gonna be fine. Um, and so I went and I got in the shower and it was just dark and I was in the shower and this was like the first time and only time actually that I checked myself. So like I felt inside and I could feel what I know now was like the bag of waters and like the baby's head under the bag of waters. But of course, like when you feel that, it's like, whoa, what is this like alien thing?
Yeah.
You know? And that's when I knew for sure that I was like, okay, so I am definitely like actually gonna have a baby. Because up until that point, it was like I was going through like these intense, you could call them contractions. I call them like sensations because they didn't super hurt. Like it wasn't super painful. The only time it was like painful is if I tried to lay in my bed and my body was like, no, this hurts,
Yeah.
but I wasn't in pain, so it wasn't until like I felt that I was like, okay, for sure my body's about to give birth. And I just like talked to my baby and was like, "Hey baby, I love you. I'm so excited to meet you. Life is hard, but it's worth it." And yeah, it was just really sweet. Got out of the shower, was on the toilet and my water broke on the toilet, which was so lovely, easy cleanup.
So
Um, yeah. Um, and like I called out to my man, I was like, my water broke, and he was like, oh, awesome. He like came and tried to like lead me back to the birth pool, and I was like, no. I'm staying right here, like my tiny little dark bathroom. I was like, this is where it's happening. And yeah, there was like a whole situation where I had him move this like nice towel that I had laid on my bathroom floor because I didn't want to give birth on this nice towel. Um, because like that was important for some reason. I was like, no, this is my nice beach towel. Like, get another towel. Um, so we set the floor up in there and I was just going through it. And it was like after my water broke, it got more intense. And like, because I think what happened was like now the baby was like really starting to descend down. And I did like, I threw up one. And then I hit this point of like, I don't like, I just like was looking at my guy and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is pretty wild. And he just looked at me and he's like, you're doing great. Your body knows how to give birth. Your baby knows how to be born. It's going to be okay. And we just like hugged and I was like, I know you're right, but this is just hard. And it was just so good. He was such a good support. And so yeah, I was just riding it out there in the bathroom. I ended up like I was like knelt down in front of the toilet, like holding on to the toilet bowl. And that's how I pushed the baby out. And when the baby started to crown, definitely felt the ring of fire. And I was vocalizing pretty loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, very loud. And like the baby's head came out and I like made sure to stop pushing and I like leaned to a way that I could like feel the baby's head and I was like, okay, yes, that is a baby's head. That is sticking out of me. I'm having a baby. Cool. Right. I'm doing it. Like it wasn't like
I
oh,
love
that's
it.
my baby. It was like just like a check and I was like, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that's a baby. Cool. All right, I'm doing it.
We're doing the thing. We're
And
doing the thing.
yes. And like lean back forward and my fella says that like, yep, the baby's head. After that, it was just like his body came out and it like did the turn and he caught the baby and just handed him to me through my legs. Um, we didn't know it was a boy. But when I grabbed his little booty, I could immediately tell that he was a boy. And, I remember saying, I was like, it's a boy. I knew it was a boy. Because there at the very end, I really felt like I was having a boy. And it was just like, yeah, it was just like my baby was there. We were on the bathroom floor. We moved from the bathroom floor to my bed where I had wanted to be the whole time, but again, my body was like, no laying down. And as soon as we got into the bed, I was there for a moment, and it was probably only like maybe 5 minutes. And then the placenta came, and I felt it. I was like, oh gosh, grab the bowl. The placenta came, and then after that, it was done. The baby was like a little gurgly, but he was breathing, he was crying, he latched to my breast, and we were just like kind of like amazed.
Yeah.
Um, I was just like, okay, I did it. I had a baby, and I was like glowing, and it was like I was still like going through like a lot of like body, like, body pain. Like I had like the after pains, but it was just like, oh my gosh, like the rush of like, this is my baby. I really gave birth to my baby. And the best part too was just my fella and how he was crying and he was looking at us and he was like, I have a son. We have a son. And he was just so blissed out. And it was just so sweet and so pure. It was just the three of us. And now I know too that like God was in that room with us and
Wow.
like God was rejoicing that like, his a new child had been born and it was just like it was just so peaceful and blissful and happy.
Mm.
And We left the, his cord attached for probably like 3 or 4 hours. Like we really don't have like a time frame. I know that the baby was born at like 12:35
Mm-hmm.
a.m. So he was born on the 7th, which is so special to me because I was born on the 7th, and seven's like my favorite number.
Mm.
Um, we did a candle burning with the cord, and then I ate French toast and bacon in my bed the
Oh,
next day.
love it.
Yeah, like that was it. It was so good. It was just so sweet. We didn't have to go to the hospital.
That's
Yeah,
so amazing. So,
yeah.
so then like what are some
Mm.
things that took place within the next, few weeks? Like were there any postpartum things that really stand out?
Um, I mean, we were again just kind of like in our own little world. I didn't notice anything immediately postpartum. Like, of course, the physical healing was kind of hard. And okay, my guy is awake, so you might hear him. I don't know if you can hear him.
A little.
Hello. Well,
We're talking about your birth?
oh, he's so upset that he woke up and I was not in bed with him.
Poor
Oh
baby. We
gosh.
can
Oh
end it there. We have a lovely birth story.
Thanks for tuning in to the Birth and Rebirth podcast.
Make sure to keep up with us on Instagram at the Birth and Rebirth Podcast so you never miss an episode.
And check out our personal pages for our birth services and offerings.
We'll be back next week with another juicy conversation, inspiring birth story, or testimony of God's goodness.
Bye, y'all.